there's certainly going to be an impact on the property values in the immediate vicinity. And all I can do right now is beg everybody that has any interest whatsoever in this to please walk the Glenwood community. Walk the community behind where these houses and apartments are going to be put up. You'll see, you're going to be walking downhill from Chatham Road down to Baltusrol. When we had our first big storm here, and it was probably about 15 years ago, somebody's washing machine and dryer just sailed down. This was when Ridgewood Road, people had boats out there, and there were boats on Millburn Avenue. People's washers and dryers were out for Monday pickup, and they wound up at the bottom of the road on Meadowbrook Road. That's how much the water goes down from Chatham Road to Millburn Avenue. And you want to build these houses there. Well, I think we all need to get that sewer insurance that New Jersey American Water keeps trying to get us to buy, because I don't know how the sewers are going to work. I don't know how anything's going to work. We've had problems with the catch basin that's down there that we call the Green Bridge ever since I moved in there, and they put it up. So there's nothing to catch any of the water that's going to be flowing downhill when these apartments are built. So we'll all be going down to Millburn Avenue and meeting by the new developments in Springfield.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to point out that I know the Assemblyman, and he sends me all his materials on this subject. I think that anyone who's been involved in this over the years, and he certainly hears from everyone about it, is in total agreement that the builder's remedy lawsuit methodology of providing affordable housing, whereby it's kind of the tail on the dog, is imposing upon the state, and particularly North Jersey, unacceptable burden on infrastructure, roads, waterworks, schools. I'm familiar with cases where people go before the judge from the town, and they say, Judge, if this project goes in, we don't have room in the schools. Judge says, build a school, approved. Judge, we really don't have enough capacity in our sewage treatment plant. Add an addition to it. I mean, it's horrific.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't believe that our hands are tied. I think the point of my coming up and reading this is because I think maybe we're going to be turning a corner on this, because now people's eyes have been opened up. So, I'm not asking you to, do whatever you need to do, but if there's a possibility that there's going to be a hearing and we're going to be coming in after the fact, where now the tide is turning a little bit in terms of the acknowledgement that we don't have, I'm sure that people thought that there would be infrastructure and things would be going on, and that things wouldn't be totally privatized, that we'd have the transportation. Whoever thought when Midtown Direct came to town and everybody walked off the train with a smile on their face, what we would be living through now? Well, we always thought that the future meant progress. Now we're starting to have our eyes opened about some of the negative results of really wanting to do good and house people and be fair. I mean, I don't have any issue with, people need a place to live. I walk through Penn Station every day, and I'm walking over people that are deranged, that have no homes,
Okay,
that,
I know.
okay.
I know.
So it's not as if I'm saying, don't come to my backyard. It's just that I think we have to slow down and really,
Okay, so we'll
really
find out.
intensely feel what the consequences are of this.
Thank you. We'll find out when the next mediation meeting is. We have nothing planned, so I personally don't have any new information. I'll see.
Okay, but we may be
Okay.
getting new information.
Okay.
so.
Stephanie Nesser, 79 Stony Lane in Short Hills. I am totally naive. I am not a lawyer, but just for my own edification, and when a private developer has a property, are they required in any way to do traffic studies, how their buildings are going to, or the residents are going to impact the schools? Transportation. I mean, you alluded to the fact that towns really have no remedies, right? That judges say, build it. But are there any mandates that a private developer has to follow when they have a construction project such as this one?
Well, the way this works generally is that when the litigation is commenced against the municipality, the judge can, and often does, appoint a special master and sends the case off to mediation. If the mediation fails, it comes back to court and gets litigated, and the court decides.
So right now, we're in mediation, is that?
Mediation. The special master is taking into consideration a number of those things which have been brought to him, frankly, by members of your mediation team. There have been a number of suggestions made over time about things that people are concerned about, and I can at least report to you that those matters have been brought up by the members of the township committee who are on that team. This mediation, if it results in a settlement, then the project will be governed by a zoning ordinance which is passed to control this development. The project will go to the planning board. But before that, there's a process that the mayor has announced whereby the settlement, if it comes to a point of settlement, would be the subject of an open public meeting, which time all of the details of the proposal would be put forward, followed by a settlement agreement, resulting in another public session where the settlement agreement would be made available to everyone beforehand so that the terms of the settlement could be discussed by the members of the public with the attorneys and with the planner, and considerations such as the
So
things you've raised.
is the Glenwood School principal allowed to be involved? Or is the Arboretum allowed to be are they involved in this process at all?
The Arboretum
No, they
commented
have,
something
they
in
have
the
chosen
beginning, but
not
they
to speak.
decided not to get involved.
They have chosen not to speak publicly.
Both the Glenwood principal and the Arboretum?
No, they're not on the
We
principal.
never got in touch with the Glenwood principal. But he wouldn't have been in these private mediations
No, of course
anyway.
not. Of
But
course
when
not.
it comes to the public sessions, of course he'd be invited to speak. And we would hear his concerns.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Good evening, Phil Kirsch, 93 Cedar Street. There are several issues that I know residents of Millburn have been concerned about regarding the reservation, like further development, and as the mayor mentioned, flood mediation. And another one that came up was a couple of weeks ago. My wife were walking in the reservoir, and we noticed along one side of the reservoir there were a few dozen trees that were cut down. And it could be a very simple answer to this. Maybe they were diseased, maybe there's some other reason, but I wrote a letter to the chief executive's office, the county executive's office, didn't get an answer. Another Millburn resident wrote a couple of letters and didn't get an answer, and is actually asking for a meeting with the county executive about this and other issues. But I wonder if someone here or a representative from the county has any idea why so many trees have been cut down along that side.
So he shook his head no, and when Alex and I go to talk to the county executive about Campbell's Mill Pond, that dam, we will ask about that. I don't know the reason. I saw some of those letters on the Work Mom site, and I didn't answer because I don't have an answer for her.
Yeah.
But we can definitely find out.
Yeah, it's on the side over by where the train runs, on that side of the reservoir where you walk.
I know they're redoing that train.
Yeah, but this is right along the reservoir itself, but I mean, it's on the side across from where the swans are, on that other side. And there were just so many trees. Some of them were marked and some of them weren't, but I really
I don't
didn't
want
see,
to speculate, so
yeah.
I'm not going to guess.
When
but
are you meeting with them?
When they call back and give us a date. We just emailed them like a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
probably
so
on
I think you
Friday.
saw at least one of the letters,
I did.
asking for a meeting, because none of us have
Right.
gotten any kind of an answer.
I know you are very diligent. You go to the freeholder meetings. I don't know when the next freeholder meeting is, but that's another place that you could speak publicly and it's on the record.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks.
Thanks.
Let me know if and when you get some kind of answer.
We will.
Okay.
Okay.
Deborah Nevis, 65 Knollwood Road. I want to try to explain a little bit why you're hearing the tenor in the public comments that you're hearing. I want you to try to imagine what it was like sort of having this opaque process where we know nothing. And suddenly, you know, especially Mr. Cosgrove, who is extremely diligent in terms of trying to keep up with what's going on, to suddenly go on the Silverman website and see this posting, particularly given that when Ms. Burstein was mayor, she specifically made an effort to have Silverman take down the posting that they had put up. This was well over a year ago. And she worked to have them take it down, and they took it down. And so suddenly, for them to post, as of Monday, these pictures, which are not the old pictures, these are not the pictures that they have been using since this first came to our attention many years ago, it feels like at this point. These are new renderings, and they're more detailed. So when we see that posted on the Silverman site, and then we hear some kind of confirmation from someone who we are led to believe has authority and is speaking for Silverman, that yes, indeed, there will be 62 apartments on this site. Imagine what that's going to do to us. We haven't heard anything from any of you about this. So this is the only information that we are given access to. It's coming from Silverman. So if you're hearing upset here, and I think a feeling of betrayal, because that's the only truth, or that's the only information, I should say, that we're getting, that's why. We've heard nothing from you guys. I understand, you know, that there's a concern about confidentiality, but when one side is breaking the confidentiality and it's not the side that represents us, there's a reaction, and that's what you're hearing. And it's frustrating. You know, I went to vote today for the election and was reminded again that you all represent us. We are not being given a voice to speak on this development. We are relying on all of you to do it for us, particularly the members of the mediation committee. And so to see that this was posted on the Silverman site leaves me, and I think I can speak for other people, feeling like we are not being adequately represented. And why are you here except to represent our and advocate for our interests? So I just want to say, you know, I know there was surprise at the tenor of some of the comments, but just think about it from our perspective. We know nothing, and that's what we get. A new posting from Silverman as of Monday, making it look like this is a done deal because we don't know anything else. So I just want to clarify that, and for you to try to empathize with us a bit.
Absolutely.
And show you, you know, where we're coming from and what it's like in our shoes to be so powerless in this, and to rely on you for you not to, for whatever reasons, give us any information.
Well,
That's
Deborah,
we're
I mean,
trying.
I agree. I feel blindsided by this also because we haven't met. I have no new information, and then Mr. Cosgrove sends this to me, and I'm like, oh. I mean, so I'm as blindsided as you because I certainly wouldn't put any information out because I don't have the authority. There's nothing for me to share. There's nothing for Kit to share. So, you know, I can't apologize for Silverman's actions, and I can only speak to saying that we will find out. I don't know
And why
they
they're
did this. I don't
confirming
know.
to
I
Ms.
can't-
Shearer that, yes, indeed, there will be 62 apartments, which, by the way, is exactly where we were, 2 years ago. It had started at 82, they agreed to 62. So then there's the additional feeling of, what was this for? Like, if we're right where we were from almost the very beginning, when Silverman on their own went down to 62 or through some minor negotiation or cursory negotiation, and that's where we are 3 years later, 2.5 years later, whatever it is. What was the point? You know, what's the point? What's
Okay, well,
what's the
let
point
us
of
get-
all this money that's being spent, all this time that's being put into this? If it, and I understand this may not be the case, and it may not be 62, 192 or 7 parking spaces and 10,000 square feet of medical office space, but it's really bad PR for you guys.
Okay,
And
so give us a chance to follow up tomorrow, okay?
okay,
Please, thank you, but we hear you, we hear exactly
Okay.
what you're saying.
okay, thank you.
Lynn Ranieri, 94 Oakview Terrace. I just have a quick procedural question, and Kit, I apologize if you went over this and I didn't catch it. What is the next step if a settlement comes back and is presented to the Township Committee, the public gives input, and then you all vote to turn it down? What happens next?
The case will go to court to be litigated.
Again,
Well, which is where we would have been, I'm sorry, Kid,
Yeah.
if we didn't at least try with the mediation. So
Special
we were,
master.
right, so we could still wind up there,
okay.
okay?
Yaron Rudlick, 60 Farley Road. There's been a lot of talk around the traffic situation in town. It seems to only be getting worse, and in particular around the parking deck at the train station has become an extremely dangerous situation. People cross wherever they want. In between, Essex Street gets backed up all the way to Lackawanna, where you can't even make a right turn anymore. Cars jump across traffic, 3 lanes, coming from the other side of Lackawanna to get into that parking deck. What I don't understand is why isn't the entrance on Lackawanna? The parking deck is designed to have entry from Lackawanna, and it solves every issue we have there. It does.
Let me ask you a question, when that deck was first built, wasn't it there and we changed it,
No.
Alex?
It was never there
Something
because
was changed,
it wasn't
wasn't it?
changed. I read the original parking
Yeah.
study. It was completely wrong what the person did. They said it was like a sports arena. Everybody comes at different times, but everybody leaves at the same time. False. Everybody comes at the exact same time. If you stand on Glen 10 minutes before a train, every car is flying down. People take different trains home at night. They have different walking schedules, but when you're there in the morning, you have to get on that train, especially the 751. When I first parked here 4 years ago when the parking deck went up, I could not figure out how to get into the deck because it was not intuitive and it made no sense that the entrance wasn't on Lackawanna. If you let cars into Lackawanna now, you'd solve a bunch of issues. Main one is people park at the exit to drop people off. When you do that and cars don't come in, they also walk out through the exit. So people are now crossing everywhere instead of using the 2 crosswalks. The stairwell was designed the wrong way to let people off in the middle when you walk down the stairs instead of right on Essex Street where there's a crosswalk. If you start letting cars come in, they block that whole walkway. People will now be forced to walk on the Essex Street crosswalk. It is also designed when you make that right turn in for parking. Parking deck, if you don't remember, which I consider a complete failure, for what it was designed for, was to get more people in town. But nobody cared and nobody used it. The entire deck now, save 1 row downstairs, is all for commuter parking. All of it. That's what it's for. Design it, use it that way. All of the town, I'd say a majority of the town, when they're commuting, is coming down Glen. They are making a right turn other than the 6 o'clock trains because the library lot and the main lot are full, other than Friday. They're making a right turn onto Lackawanna, and then you are forcing them to make another right turn onto Essex Street, which has 2 traffic lights and a right turn only on Green to get back onto Main Street, further blocking up traffic. Today I waited 3 lights, red, green, red, green, red, green, to get from Lackawanna. I was already on Essex, but right at the turn to get into the parking deck.
Okay, so I am wondering, we have a new traffic consultant. Could we do a study, Alex, and sort out, have him with all the new toys and gadgets, do some calculations?
With all due respect,
No, no,
you
we
don't
have-
need a study.
No,
You-
they have to before they're gonna change it.
Why? What? There's
Nothing to change with
there
that
is
study?
one sign. There's 2 signs that have to come down. There's a sign on the right side when you come in, it says do not enter, and there's a sign at the top. Just take it down and see what happens. That's the easiest way, because you did a study last time and it was wrong.
Just change it?
Just take the sign down. That's all you have to do. And wait 6 months, and if it doesn't work, put it back. But I guarantee it'll work.
Okay.
You don't need to
Try
waste
that.
money. We've
Talk
wasted enough money on things that don't work.
I have a question.
I don't use the deck. I see
Okay.
people crossing in the wrong place, but I don't physically use it with a car, so I can't, I just see the people crossing wrong.
I had the opportunity to use the deck twice, once last week and once this week. What was the rationale when it was put up for this?
The rationale was it's like a sports complex. Everybody leaves at the exact same time when the game's over. So let's have 3 exits. But that is not the case. Everybody shows up at the exact same time. That's, if you want to take the 751, you are down there 7:45, you are walking across. That's what time people are showing up. You're taking the 829. I only know those trains because I go into Penn Station. There's also the Hoboken trains, which aren't as full. You are showing up 10 minutes before. Today I left my house, which is less than half a mile. I left before 8:20. I almost missed the train. On an 8:29, when all the traffic is gone, my kids are in elementary school, their bus is gone already. I couldn't get in because of the traffic on Essex. That's why everybody just makes the illegal right turn into the parking deck, because it's intuitive, that's what it's designed for, and that's the way it should be. So just take the sign down, make it say entrance, and you have 2 entrances and you have 2 exits. And then you also don't have the winter problem where there's so much snow on the current entrance, the only entrance, you can't get 2 cars because you can't push the snow far enough. You've got a building on one end and you've got woods on the other. It's that simple.
Is this something we can simply do?
No, because, listen, I commute too, and I'm also in this lot, and I don't experience any of these things that you do, and I'm also on some of these same trains that you're on.
Then I don't know where you're going because I see this
I just told you where I was going.
Okay, well, I had a colleague at work today. He said, I saw you running across. I couldn't make the train today.
I'm not debating that you didn't run across. Maybe you could leave 5 minutes
I'm not
early
talking
to get
about
to the
running. I'm
train.
talking about the general
Okay,
traffic.
then leave 5 minutes early. I mean, and-
I'm leaving 10 minutes earlier now than I used to because of this problem. I don't understand
Okay,
the
so
issue. It's
on when the deck. None of us were here. Alex was
None
here.
of us would have approved it. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have approved it.
Well, I don't know about that,
Well,
but
no, I can
when
tell
the
you.
deck was being proposed, I actually attended some of those meetings. I wasn't a public official at that time. And there was a very exhaustive and multi-meeting debate about egress and ingress to that deck. Now, you're challenging the whole design of it, and I'm not sure what the purpose of you challenging the design, because no one's going to rip down the deck and redesign it.
I'm not saying take the deck
Okay,
down. The
but
deck's
you're,
designed.
but you're not a traffic engineer, to my knowledge. And so to just say, after traffic engineers have studied this, and after there were many meetings on this, about a decision on it, and again, I'm not married to it one way or the other. I'm also not a traffic engineer. But there was a lot of discussion on it. There was a lot of planning on it. There were a lot of safety experts on it. Let me finish, please. And they all concluded that going in on the Lackawanna exit was more dangerous given the pedestrian traffic that comes out, largely through the stairs that comes down.
But-
that was the decision made by the experts. Now, I'm not going to debate you whether that's a safety precaution or not, because neither of us know. But the point is, I don't think that we should be taking the views of a resident who's not a traffic engineer and saying, change the ingress and egress because I find it, we should test it for 6 months. What if there's an accident? What if
There are
what if someone
accidents-
gets struck?
Okay.
Okay,
I mean,
there-
we're not going to sit
hold
here
on.
and do
Just
this.
let's take this back because this report you can't find it anymore. The original traffic plan of this
I
town.
didn't say I couldn't find it.
Well, you can't find it on the website anymore. It's pulled down. Was 3 parking decks. Those don't exist. There was the first one that we did where it was. Over the main lot, there was supposed to be a deck there.
There wasn't supposed
Yes,
to be a
there
deck.
was.
It was rejected.
But it was
It
part of-
presented to the
Okay, wait.
public.
No,
and
it was
rejected.
part of the
Guys.
planning. It was part of the planning.
No fighting.
Look, it doesn't work. The traffic simply
Okay, how about
doesn't
this?
work.
I forgot your name.
Your own.
Okay, your own. How about this? We have a traffic engineer who's on staff. We also have an incredible outside traffic engineering company. We will task these 2 people to start to look at it immediately, not look at it starting tomorrow. We will figure out what the best solution is, because we're not going to solve it here tonight.
Okay. But
Okay.
I don't know what you're talking about because I will show you pictures of 10 separate days where traffic is backed up all the way in Essex into Lackawanna, including this morning. So I don't know what you're not seeing.
Time you're leaving earlier. I don't know what to tell you. I mean,
It doesn't.
I'm
I'm
not
not
gonna
coming
use
2
the
minutes
gavel, but we're
before,
not
but
gonna fight.
I'm leaving. I'm leaving my house 15 minutes before the train.
before it was 10, now it's...
No,
Okay,
it's 10.
Sam,
I said I started at 10. Now it's
Guys,
15.
I'm not gonna hit the gavel. I promise you, we will task our in-house.
Fine. Who is this engineer and all these people we have? Is there a way I can find who out they are? What's the timing of a study that we have to do?
Well, why don't you give us a second to sort of
Leave us your
digest-
name, leave us your,
Yeah.
all your contact information.
digest what you've said, but I think we can have individuals look at it. I don't think it's necessarily just as simple. We have to think about other traffic that's involved in that. Those that do want to turn right on Essex that aren't necessarily going to the deck as well. So that could impact your
Right,
flow
because
of
you
traffic
can't make
there.
that right. You can't go 2 lanes wide. You
Right.
run into the same problem as Lackawanna onto Millburn Ave, which is 3. People don't know which lane.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So
just
we
think there's
will-
a little more to it. We'll certainly take a look at it.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else for public comment?
Good evening.
Hi.
Dennis Estes, 333 Lupine Way, Short Hills, New Jersey. Hello, Mr. Falcone. I am a mediator. I am a lawyer.
Full disclosure.
Just so there's no question, Mr. Levy or anyone else, I'm not a traffic engineer, though I have dealt with them. Just a couple of issues that I want to follow up on with regard to the Silverman property. Number one, with regard to the mediation aspect. There's nothing that should prevent the counsel for Millburn Short Hills to advise the court at its Friday conference as to what Silverman is doing in terms of what it has on its website and what they're answering questions from the public, because that's in violation of the concept of mediation that's going on. That's unfair, that's improper as far as that's concerned. Unless, as some of the people, and I trust what you're saying, that there's been no resolution of this, and this is all creation of Mr. Silverman, perhaps to do exactly what we're doing here tonight.
That's what I'm thinking.
The second item is, I know that the last time I spoke here, which was several months ago, there was a representation that under no circumstance would a determination, a decision be made with regard to any resolution of the Silverman property unless and until the public has the opportunity to comment on what's being discussed. What I ask each of the members of the Township Committee is very simple. Keep an open mind until the public has the opportunity to discuss it with you and to present it. Merely because there is a proposal that comes out of the mediation, it should not be a fait accompli that, well, we've already agreed in a mediation, so we're listening to you, but it's falling on deaf ears. We don't want that to be the case. I want to change subjects.
Okay.
I'm on Millburn Avenue a significant amount of time using the various stores and restaurants and like, and I have noticed that the number of empty stores is increasing monthly, weekly, whatever it happens to be, and I want to know, what is the township doing to resolve this problem?
You've missed a few minutes.
Okay, shh. What is the township doing? We cannot force property owners to rent their buildings.
I understand that.
We have had one roundtable with a good number of the property owners. We have scheduled another one to speak to them. From that first meeting, we came up with some really good suggestions. We heard them. Some things that will affect our zoning, some things that will affect sign ordinances, things that will make it more palatable, things that will help them when prospective tenants want to come before the planning board or the zoning board for variances. So we are trying to work with them. They are on the ground. They know where
Because they're losing money as much as anyone else because
Right.
the stores are vacant.
correct. And we're trying to work with them to be able to help them get clientele in there. So we're listening to them. We have another meeting set up for the end of the month. And those help us with our zoning board and our planning board and our planner to see what we can do.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
You're welcome.
Hi, Tom Herbertson, 76 Oakview Terrace. Just sort of a revelation to me that there is a traffic consultant on staff, and also the availability of an outside traffic consultant. As far as the Glenwood property, if you're going to have another 190 parking spaces, and also all the patients that are going to be coming out to this 10,000 square foot medical facility, I would just ask that the council engage at least the in-house guy and see what the impact of all those extra cars is going to be. Because when you come up Woodland to go, that curve you can barely get, with the cars parked in front of the apartments, you can barely get two cars going back and forth, especially on that curve right at the apartment. So I would just ask, maybe that's more ammunition to at least the mediation to. I mean, it's not going to cost us anything, especially if you have the in-house parking consultant, traffic consultant, at least look at it with all the extra traffic. Thanks.
Thank you.
Deborah Nevis, 65 Knoll Road. All this traffic talk reminded me of something. When I went to the Springfield presentation on the SAC site development, my understanding was that residents were not going to be allowed to make a left turn onto Morris Turnpike from the development, that there would be no left turns out of the entrance exit of the SAC site.
So we had spoken with them, and we questioned why they said that publicly, and we're waiting for them to get back to us.
Okay.
Okay.
Because otherwise, if they want to
Yeah.
get to Springfield, they're going
Right.
on Millburn Avenue through Short Hills
I can't
and
speak
down.
for them, but their traffic engineer had said that would be possible, so let's find out. Yeah, they said that was approved, a left turn. I don't know why that came out at the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. We're done with public comment? Okay. The committee will now consider consent agenda resolutions. The resolutions listed on the consent agenda for consideration are as follows. The bills list: authorize refund of tax overpayments, authorize cancellation of sewer charge, authorize advertisement of bids for the roof of the Short Hills train station eastbound, approval of fireworks display permit for Canoever Country Club, award professional service agreement, which has to do with the police department roof and their entire HVAC project, renewal of ABC liquor licenses, that's throughout the town, right?
Yes.
Authorize execution of storm sewer indemnification agreement, and approval of additional sidewalk cafe licenses. Are there any comments from the committee or public in regards to any items listed on the consent agenda?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So, my understanding is, with respect to the firehouse roof, that we will be hiring Beck Engineering as our project, as the engineer on the project, and Legacy as the construction manager.
Correct.
So, Legacy is the construction manager rep due to the scale and the complexity of the project. And a township representative will be, the township needs someone on site to coordinate the phasing and the movements within the building. And that Legacy has the extensive background in managing these large-scale HVAC construction projects, public buildings. My question for you is, what is the oversight and accountability of Legacy to the township? And how is that going to be vetted, monitored, and measured through the project?
So generally with the large-scale projects such as this, in which you do employ a construction manager, there's a project team. In particular, we will have our construction official assigned to this project as our liaison, but we will also be meeting with the construction manager and the contractor on the job periodically to go over the progress, make sure that the functions of the construction manager and the contractor are being performed. And generally a report will be provided as a result of those meetings. And that is the oversight of those individuals.
In previous projects, have we engaged a construction management company to oversee and act as our,
Advocate.
as our advocate?
Yes.
Have we ever used Legacy before?
No.
This will hopefully prevent change orders and problems and delays, which is the impetus for having someone on board watching. This is a huge project, and it's also going on in the police department that is a functioning 24-hour building. So it's to prevent errors, mistakes, hopefully, and especially over those change orders that, as we all know, affected us very drastically in the Complete Streets project.
There's two proposals, is my understanding, from Legacy. What are the pros and cons of each one, and in your opinion, Alex?
Well, there is a proposal for part-time and a proposal for full-time. The pros of a full-time construction manager, again, is the overall complexity of the job and the nature of the building in which it's in. There are going to be about 7 phases to the project in which they have to move out of one area into the next area, all the while making sure that the police department functions as it has to, also dealing with sensitive areas such as evidence rooms, things like that, and having an advocate there that can deal with requests for information on the fly will help keep that project on schedule. It is expected to be about a 4-month project, and keeping on schedule is important so that we are not being overly disruptive to the police department and their functions in the facility. So at this point, the full-time construction manager has to me the most pros because it can be scaled back if you find that it's not wholly necessary. I think that they but what you don't necessarily want to do is get into a position where you run into trouble and have to then try to ramp them up. So I think the full-time construction manager would be necessary in this project. The project is expected to cost anywhere between $1.2 and $1.5 million. So it is a large-scale project with a lot of complexity.
And these fees are kind of customary for a project of this size?
These are consistent. Yes.
I don't see any overtime allocation. What happens for
There's,
that?
there is an hourly rate. Just give me one second.
95?
I don't see it. $40 hours per week at $95
Yes.
an hour.
Yeah.
Yep.
It doesn't, there's no,
The principal and project executive is $150 an hour, the on-site project manager is $85, the administrative assistant is $35.
right, but it doesn't say
Yeah.
anything about an overtime schedule. So if in fact we,
Yeah, it has a per month
Yeah.
fee. There is a per month fee associated with it. So if it would happen to go over a month, you'd be looking at they're estimating their cost is $17,800 a month for the full time.
right. But that's a monthly, there's, what if they, it's not a 40-hour week, it's a 50-hour week? I'm just
But-
asking, is
yeah,
there
so
any,
then
is there any, I don't see any provision in
Yeah,
here.
the provision would be that it would go to the hourly rate that is assigned in the agreement or in the
The
proposal.
flat hourly rate, not a,
Time and a half?
yeah. I would like to just make sure that's vetted in the final,
Sure.
that, pardon me?
They're not employees.
No, but they're, well, it could be.
It's-
They're billing like a full-time consulting. They're billing it a 40-hour work week.
If they're going to exceed
Yeah.
their not to exceed, then they're going to have to come back to this committee for approval of that. as a
So
change.
this is what the fee will be And the committee will know that there's not any kind of overage.
Well, if there would be an overage, or if there was a necessity for an overage.
We
it
would
come
vote on that before
Correct.
extending the $90,000,
Before going beyond the.
beyond the
Correct.
$90,000.
Correct.
Is that clear to everybody? No,
Yeah.
wasn't clear to, was that clear to everybody
Yeah,
but me?
that's good.
Yes? Sam, Tara?
Sam, clear?
I'm clear.
Okay. Tara?
Clear.
All right, clear. All right. May I have a motion to approve the resolutions listed on the consent agenda?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Committee Member Bernstein?
Yes.
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Committee Member Lieberberg?
Yes.
Committee Member Purpose?
Yes.
Mayor Paul
Yes.
Why is Sam not committee member?
Yeah, why am I?
What are
Why is he
you?
not
I'm
committee
excluded.
member and why is he Mr.?
He's the only-
Salutation
He's
is
the only
changed for
Mr.
me.
up here.
Huh?
You're the only Mr. Oh, no, you're Mr. You're Mr.
No,
get the
he's anticipating January 2 with me.
Already?
Yes, that's what he's doing.
Um,
I wish it was January.
Don't rush it.
All right. I am scheduled to sponsor ordinance 2533-19. I would like to present an ordinance entitled 2533-19, Capital Ordinance of the Township of Millburn in the County of Essex, New Jersey, authorizing the making of various public improvements and acquisitions in and for the township, by and for the township, appropriating therefore the sum of $1,894,000, and providing that such sum so appropriated shall be raised from the capital improvement fund of the township. I have to find my notes where this is for. Alex, do you wanna just,
Yeah, this is the.
here it is.
You wanna go over it?
Yeah, yeah, okay. So this is for various things for the fire department, acquisition of new fire apparatus consisting of a pumper, fire engine, new automotive vehicle, things for the fire department. That's the cost of $602,000. For the Department of Public Works, acquisition of a new additional and replacement equipment and machinery consisting of a front end loader, another new automotive vehicle, including original apparatus equipment, and a forester vehicle, $185,000. Recreation, resurfacing of basketball courts at Gerald Park, $37,000. General building improvements at a cost of $100,000 for the public buildings in town. Engineering, resurfacing, seal coating, micropaving, various roads in town, cost $500,000. Police Department, acquisition of new communication and signal systems, equipment consisting of portable radios, $70,000. Engineering, undertaking of the Short Hills Garden Drainage Improvement Project, cost of $400,000. So, all things that must be done in the township. I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with law in the item, and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, June 18th, 2019. May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Committee Member Bernstein?
Yes.
Committee Member Levy?
Yes.
Committee Member Lieberberg?
Yes.
Committee Member Purpose?
Yes.
Mayor Paul
Yes. Committeewoman Burstein is scheduled for the next ordinance.
I present an ordinance entitled Ordinance Number 2534-19, bond ordinance to authorize the making of various public improvements in, by, and for the Township of Millburn in the County of Essex, State of New Jersey, to appropriate the sum of $1,614,000 to pay the cost thereof, to make a down payment, to authorize the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriation, and to provide for the issuance of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of such bonds. The projects, there are several purposes for the financing for which these obligations would be issued, such as supplemental funding for the undertaking of improvements to the Slayton Sanitary Sewer Pump Station. The township has herebefore appropriated $310,000 for such improvements by ordinance 2481-17 adopted in June 20th, 2017. The appropriation and estimated cost is $850,000, down payment appropriated $70,000, bonds and notes authorized would be $780,000 for 40 years of usefulness. It would also be for supplemental funding for the undertaking of the HVA system upgrades at the police headquarters. And we're looking at authorizing another $475,000 with a down payment of $25,000. And reconstruction of Mountain View Road, Phase 2, from Whittingham Terrace to Wyoming Avenue, and that the appropriation is $264,000, down payment authorized of $13,200, and bonds and notes authorized for $250,800, for the aggregate amount of $1,614,000. I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and that the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with law in the item, and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, June 18th, 2019. Chairman?
Oh, may I have a second?
Second.
Committee Member Bursting?
Yes.
Committee Member Levy?
Yes.
Committee Member Lieberberg?
Yes.
Committee Member Krupas?
Yes.
Mayor Balagla?
Yes. Committeewoman Lieberberg, next ordinance?
Yes. This ordinance 2535-19 is an ordinance to amend and supplement the revised general ordinance of the Township of Millburn, Chapter 4, subsection 4-39, with respect to vehicle towing and storage services. The purpose of this ordinance is to revise the towing rates so that they are more in line with our surrounding municipalities and fees set forth by the New Jersey State Police, as well as clarifying some of the language to several subsections of the ordinance. Just to give the public a little bit of a flavor, this is with respect to storage and garage facility fees, towing charges. It increases the rates that are more in line with other municipalities in our region. Day or night rates are going up from 100 to 150. Day and night rate on a medium tow up from 200 to 250, and so forth. Some labor charge increase, heavy duty rates, some increases. I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and that the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with the law on the item, and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, June 18th.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Committee Member Bursting?
Yes.
Committee Member Levy?
Yes.
Committee Member Lieberberg?
Yes.
Committee Member Krupas?
Yes.
Mayor Balagla?
Yes. Committeeman Levy?
2536-19 is an ordinance authorizing a lease between Millburn Short Hills Youth Baseball and the Township/Millburn Rec Commission. The purpose of the ordinance is to establish a 10-year lease at $1 per year, where the tenant is Millburn Short Hills Youth Baseball and the landlord is a combination of the Board of Rec and the Township Committee. This is a renewal of a prior leases that we've entered into, which takes place at Giro Park, of course, and allows Millburn Short Hills Youth Baseball to conduct its baseball at that facility. I move that the ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with the law on the item for a hearing and final passage on Tuesday, June 18, 2019.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Committee Member Bursting?
Yes.
Committee Member Levy?
Yes.
Committee Member Lieberberg?
Yes.
Committee Member Krupas?
Yes.
Mayor Balagla?
Yes. Does any member of the committee have any items of old business they would wish to discuss? Okay. We do have two items of new business. The first is proposed zoning revisions, which would affect lighting, height, and some use definitions. Alex, I believe you can take this?
Yeah, we're presenting before the committee some proposed changes to the zoning ordinance that would have an effect to the business districts in particular when it comes to use definitions, site plan exemption, the establishment of those uses within the business districts, height, and parking requirements for the new uses. And the committee was given this, and hopefully had time to review that a lot of this revolves around creating new definitions for uses to become a little bit more, I think, in line with the needs, the desire, the market, whatever that might be, for the business districts, and would add definitions for educational play center, health and fitness facility, indoor commercial recreation use, instructional schools, pet care and grooming, and showroom, and how those are established throughout.
I have a question, and I might have misread it when I reviewed it.
Mhm.
Are we removing certain permitted uses, or no, just add?
No, just that.
Okay, then I know, okay, thanks.
It's also outlined in here that again, part of the discussions that would be about having to smooth or help smooth the way for certain applicants in regards to site plan exemptions.
So I do have a question though, because in Highway Business B2, it deletes beauty and barber shops, laundry, cleaning, I can't read this, something.
Tailoring.
Laundry, something and tailoring services.
Mhm.
Maybe it's meant to be cleaning.
Yeah, can't be leaning.
Photographic, portrait studios, shoe repair shops, and it adds certain other things. So are we removing those uses from the B2 zone? Is that what's
That-
meant to happen?
That's what's being proposed here. But that, again, I think that's why we're here and discussing this is and again, I should just note that the township planner, myself and the zoning officer did originally sort of put some of this together for the township committee's consideration.
And again, the Highway Business B2 is which area in town?
That is Morris Turnpike.
Okay, and I understand why we're adding, I'm just not
Mhm.
sure why some of these are coming out.
Well, I think possibly the idea is that these are retail services and retail sales.
So that's just redundant?
It's redundant, correct.
Oh, it's covered already under the general.
Right.
Got it.
Okay.
So somebody could
Actually,
still have
that
a.
makes a lot of sense then, so you're not going to say, well, you have specific, but got it, okay.
So someone could still have a portrait studio on Morris Avenue. You're not taking that
Right.
away.
Right, because
Just
they're still
under
on that
retail
retail
sales.
sales.
Right.
And again, so how those are applied, it also does address height within the B4, which is the downtown district, in proposing that would move to 3 stories. And it also applies the parking for those new uses consistent with those uses for indoor commercial recreation, pet care, for 1 space per 200 square feet of gross floor area. And those are the major changes to those.
So the central business B4, we are not going to permit, oh, never mind. What about the fitness studios? Are we gonna allow those or no?
What page are you on?
4.
My understanding in the central, it was, sorry, let me just, instructional schools and studios, which applies to Pilates, yoga, things like that. But I think part of that was allowing an all-out sort of, gym, with gym equipment.
This is this, replacing this.
So if you look at the definitions that were provided.
Okay, so you can't have a gym, but you can have a Pilates studio or yoga studio,
Or a cycling studio.
or a cycling studio,
Right.
but only one pool.
I have a question going back to the highway business B2.
Mm-hmm.
So no dry cleaning?
Yeah, that's retail service.
Retail service.
Oh, I
So,
see.
retail-
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, you're
It's
just based on
you're just
definitions now.
you're just redefining what the service is,
Well, it's,
or
it's
potentially.
Yeah, and I think
could
it's meant to clean up the
To
various
simplify.
businesses. Correct.
Yeah,
Help streamline some of those permit,
Right,
applications that
right.
have come through.
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
An important one is the height, which would be page 10,
Yep.
you know. And the lighting, Alex?
Well, I just wanted to,
Oh.
I think kind of tackle that aside separately.
Oh,
but-
we're done.
But if there are any other questions on the,
Yeah, I just,
zoning-
we do have, so I guess I'm a little
Personal training would
confused,
come
but,
under here.
so where does personal training fall?
Under, the studios.
And health and fitness, right?
Workshops for dance, yoga. Well, and again, I think this is part of the
Why we're,
discussion.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay. So personal training.
I guess we gotta really figure out, basically you don't want places with a lot of machines downtown, is that it?
Right. Like more, I think, and again, this is kind of what the committee feels is the direction, but more of
Personalized service.
more of classes rather than a constant in and out or constant
Like a Gold's
working.
Gym.
Right. Or can do or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. That's in the B2 plan.
Right, no, I understand, but we do have downtown, or I think in that zone, we have a small, what I think would fit under the health and fitness facility. Longevity?
There's so many, I don't know.
Longevity's been there forever, it used to be short.
So there may need to be, so I'll just make a note that there should be more clarification between those two definitions and
Right,
whether it might fit within the B4. Okay?
and of course, anything there now is grandfathered in.
Right. I think the next one was the lighting ordinance. So the other proposed, for discussion was a revision to the lighting ordinance. The idea here was to make a fix to the lighting ordinance to allow for light emitting diodes or LEDs. Currently didn't have a way for applicants before the planning board to deal with that. It also gives a little bit more clarification and insight to what would be required to individuals going before the board for a lighting plan. So,
I'm going back one ordinance,
okay, sorry.
sorry. On the building.
Yes.
So you gave us information that Ridgewood and Madison have 45 feet heights, and we're going to 40. Is there a reason we decided 40 versus 45? Just out of curiosity, like what was the thought process in the maximum height?
I think that the thought process was something that was consistent with the master plan, which stated 3 stories. So, and I think that Paul felt that was a good. The township's planner thought that was a good height. Again, this is for the committee's
No, I have no
consideration.
clue. I don't know why one is, I mean, they're all 3 stories, and yes, I think that this is great that we are addressing some of the issues raised by the master plan review.
Mhm.
And it's exactly what should be happening. But I'm just trying to figure out why 45, why 40 versus 45, and was there any discussion with respect to that?
There was some discussion around would it be 38, and I think the idea that because each story is 10 foot, yeah, and I think that's
Yeah.
why it was extended to 40 because you tend to have a little bit lower ceiling, knowing that probably your first floor is gonna be a retail space, and anything above that might be residential or additional offices. You might not need the ceiling height there. So I think the idea was to give a little bit more, but not necessarily get into the upper echelons of a 3-story building.
Wasn't it also, my understanding was it was also in keeping with the existing 3 stories that we currently have in some of the areas of the downtown, that what they are now, not to exceed that?
Yeah, you know, there are a lot of 3 and 4-story buildings still in the downtown currently, but we did not have an analysis of the actual height of those buildings, so that didn't necessarily go into that 40-foot number.
I actually like him to explain his 40 versus 45, simply because if you're gonna have a pretty decent ceiling size on the first floor, and apartments above that you're gonna have something more than 8, you know, low ceilings would be, I just would like to know what that.
I can certainly have Paul share a rationale with the committee.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay, so, and then,
Lighting's Greek to me. It's
Okay. so the lighting ordinance would be to add LEDs and create provisions for a lighting plan. Okay.
Sounds good, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So Alex, what's the next step of this? We'll get that clarification from
Yes.
Paul and come back and talk about it again?
Yeah, I think you know the hope is again if there's consensus among the committee to move forward with, you know, and assuming we can get that rationale, perhaps have an introduction of an ordinance.
And a little clarification also on the
On the height.
definitions.
Fitness, yeah.
On the definitions,
Yes.
yeah.
Great. Okay, another item of new business would be the non-binding referendum for marijuana legislation that we are considering putting on the November general ballot. You want me to talk about this? Jackie? I mean, I'm totally in agreement. You want to go over some of these finer details?
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely. You should ask questions, why we're here.
On your 1, 2, 3, 4th whereas, and really it's probably more for Kit,
Mm-hmm.
is we talk about it as implications for the community in terms of possible cultivation, distribution, retail sales, relationship of such activity to zoning, planning, development, redevelopment. Does it also have a relationship, if that's the term you're using, to our police and use of resources?
Law enforcement?
Law enforcement, resources?
Insert that.
I mean, I think you should, but.
Well, let me, there's a version that you have in the book, and then there's a version.
That got emailed?
Maybe this is appropriate at this time to.
Not yet. Not yet. We're first discussing it.
Oh, you're done, that's what I already know.
Then there's a version that I circulated today, though I'm not sure everybody saw,
Yeah.
copies.
Oh, do you?
Which
Let's look at that.
I've broken it out a little more finely to reflect the 4 kinds of permits. So instead of one question which talks about retail and the other that talks about the balance of the permits, we've set it up a little differently so that you can,
Right. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I responded to. I read online.
yes,
Yeah.
maybe what I ought to do is back up a little.
Okay.
This legislation, which has been under consideration by the legislature, has been put on the back burner. What the state has decided to do is to put a question on the ballot in 2020 to assess the sentiment of the statewide populace as to whether the legalization of marijuana and all these various aspects of it should go forward. That legislation, if it's like the current legislation, will contain, I suspect it will, an opportunity for any municipalities that would not like to have the various permits issued within Millburn Township, for example, to opt out of that by passing an ordinance saying, no, we don't want these things to occur within Millburn. That, I'm not talking about smoking marijuana, that would apparently be available anywhere, but as far as the the growing of it, the processing of it, the wholesale distribution of it, and the retail of it, there will be 4 permits that would be available to people who wanted to go into this endeavor. So what we've endeavored to do at the suggestion of the Township Committee is set up a question which would say, through an interpretive statement that explains some of what I just talked about, that you'll have the opportunity to opt out, whether you would want to have, if this legislation is passed, any of these types of permits, which would allow the correlating kinds of activities to occur within Millburn. And the voter would have the opportunity to say, yes, I'm okay with this, no, I don't like that. The law, as it currently stands, and probably as it would happen, if it gets approved in 2020, will also say that you'll have the option to go for 1 and 3, 2 and 4, none of the above. We like only one of them. There'll be a complete option on the part of the voters to select.
Or there may not be an option. Okay? Not all states allow municipalities to opt in or out.
No,
So
no.
you could be asking a referendum question that is of no moment because the later initiative, and there's a lot of discussion about what may happen here, doesn't give
agree.
that option. So
I agree.
then the members of the public may feel duped if this comes out, and however it comes out, and then there is say a retail facility if there's no opt-out. So it should be characterized in a way that this is really advisory to the extent that A, the then sitting township committee takes into account as a factor the results of this referendum, and B, to the extent it has any impact at all on such decision.
I think maybe it could be stronger. What we said is it's anticipated to include an opt-out. It may not, as you point out.
Why don't
In
we say
which
if
event,
it includes an opt-out?
then you would have the opportunity to yes on all these things.
This really renders this sort of an advisory opinion for legislation that doesn't exist.
But that's why we brought it out, because I think it shouldn't just be up to the 5 of us. My personal feelings, it should be the pulse of the community. What do they feel? Because I'm getting half different opinions from everyone I speak to. So that's why we thought we would reach out to the community in a non-binding way.
I know, but I personally think it makes sense to defer this till 2020 so that the questions rendered to the public more capture the intent of the legislation, because we don't know what that's going to be. And if the legislation in 2020 passes and, well, there is going to be no legislation. It's going to be a referendum, and then the local legislator has to decide what it wants to do. So it's not as if you defer this to 2020, it's not as if you lose anything, because there is no legislation that happens in 2020. It's just a New Jersey referendum or referenda. And by waiting, then you get to capture what actually may be passed based on the public support or not support of the proposed legislation. So what I'm saying is, you're asking questions now that may or may not have any relevance to what may or may not happen 2 years from now. And so then the sitting township committee may say, well, we had this referenda and the public said this, but people like me may say, well, the public was never given an opportunity to opine on these issues because it was never presented to them. So maybe you have to do a new referendum to the extent that the then sitting township committee finds that important in its decision making.
I happen to agree with Sam that I think this is premature to do this now, and that you'll probably be able to do it in 2021 based on just doing a referendum by the state in 2020. So I just think that I agree with Sam for the reasons he stated, that I think that it's well written but premature.
Okay.
Could I make a point on that
please.
last point that you may want to know? I think what has happened as this legislation has gone forward is that the legislature has shortened the period of time following enactment that a municipality is entitled to opt out, so that an election may not fall
Right, you may
before
have to
you
make
have
a-
the necessity to grapple with whether or not to opt out or not.
But you still have
2020
2020.
will fall.
Yeah, you still have at least a year,
You have at least a year.
at least.
I'm saying if let's suppose everybody in the state, or not everybody, but the majority of people say, oh, this is a great idea. Then the legislature would then take up the legislation again, probably in early 2021.
Maybe.
Maybe they
Okay,
won't. Maybe they won't.
Because
I-
right now, it's failed. So the proponents of the legislation, the governor, to try to move certain legislators based on public reporting, floats this referendum, hopefully that it comes out in favor, and then that may move one or two people because of the election that's going to take place in 2020. That's the theory behind it. But that may not happen. And so this is premature by that standard as well, too.
No, I agree. It may or may not happen. All I wanted to point out was that if this legislation is enacted in early 21,
You
and
may
it
not
has a
have the-
6-month period within which you have to decide whether or not you want to opt in or out, there won't be an election which is available to you to assess the views of the
Can you only do the
Right.
referendum in December?
general election.
Can you only do it in December? Or
November.
in November?
Yes,
You can't do it during the primaries, that's the
Right.
it's
question.
for the general
Right.
public.
But in any event, you still certainly could do it in 2020
Right.
at the same time that the other referendum, that the statewide referendum is going forward.
And then we'll know,
Well, you
You'll
could-
know at least what the question is.
right, we'll know what it is we're going to ask people.
Well, you also could have thousands of people move and have a new population, so I think it is still worth going out to this population in November and have this referendum. Kind of gives us an idea, a feeling of the public, and I don't think if it's premature or not, that it has any harm.
But in 2020 or 2021, you have rendered of less utility the answers to these questions. I think it helps your process to delay it rather than doing it now, because the utility of the responses will have less value by definition.
They won't be as reflective of the current population that is going to make the law for.
But they're
If it's done now
non-binding.
before 2020.
They're non-binding. This is just, in my
But
opinion.
then are we gonna do it again in 2020?
Maybe. But why miss the opportunity to
But we're
post
not
the.
missing an
to ta-
opportunity, it's gonna come again, it's definitely gonna come again.
So take it again. Why miss the opportunity to have it on the ballot now?
Because then you have voter fatigue, because then the voters a year later say, well, what's the difference between these
No.
4 questions that I was asked
you know
last
what?
year and these 4 questions this year, if any?
I don't believe that to be true.
Is this happening in our neighboring towns? Is anybody else putting this on their municipal?
Towns have, that's where we got some of the language from.
I don't
Many
know about
towns have done
neighboring
it.
towns, but there are towns
Yeah.
that have done this.
Right.
Are we voting on this tonight?
I think we have the opportunity to get ahead and see what our electorate thinks, get their pulse. It's non-binding. It's a topic that that is very much on my radar, and my relationships with the Board of Ed and MMAC have asked me, how does the Township Committee feel? They've asked me, I can't speak for my fellow committee members, but I think this is an opportunity to take, I know you had some issues with the previous surveys. This, we know, is a survey. If we're using the ballot box as a platform, we know that we're getting a cross-section of our voting population, and that allows us that it's not tainted with one group, speaking more.
Go ahead, sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
One group speaking more loudly and getting it on a Google survey. This is going to be authenticated by ballot.
I don't think anyone is suggesting that it wouldn't be an appropriate methodology to use. The only suggestion is that it's premature.
And then let's just say things change drastically between 2019 and 2020.
We vote again.
Then we just say like, well, 2019 was just done, but we're gonna go with 2020.
It's non-binding. We're
I
not.
understand that, but which set of data are we gonna look at?
What's the harm in that if we have 2 sets? I don't see
It's
any
just
harm
excess.
in reaching
We're
out.
going to be looking at the most recent data based upon our population.
Which would
So
be
at least we'll have a
2020.
benchmark, and maybe it'll be the same. Maybe it'll be different. We don't know that unless we make the business decision to survey it.
Do we need to vote on this tonight?
I think they just look for a consensus as to how we feel to see whether it's something that we want to, I guess, we'll vote on. Is that something we would vote on?
Well, we have until what, mid-August? We only have one meeting, we have one more meeting in June, one meeting in July.
Yeah, we won't wait. As a practical matter, this is just on for discussion
Yeah.
and answer your question.
Thank you.
There's no enactment in first reading or anything of that sort, or no.
Is it by ordinance
This
or
is a resolution, there's no
The
vote on
resolution's
this
on.
resolution.
There's a resolution, huh?
resolution?
You don't have to.
But, yes, no first reading, it's just once, resolution. But I can't, in all honesty, wait until August
No,
16th,
I
which is
think-
the last day.
Well, we
We're
could,
gonna, if it's your consensus that you're gonna go ahead with this stuff, then the clerk and I would begin coordinating with the Essex County Clerk and doing the things that need to be done in order to actually get this on the ballot and print it up. So,
Can we
I'm not
open
saying
it
you
to
have to
public?
decide it tonight,
No,
but you
we-
can
No public
No,
comment?
we'll
wait
talk-
forever.
we'll have it on the agenda under old business at the next meeting, and people are free to speak about it in public comment then.
Got it.
Please come back. We look forward to seeing you. I believe, let's see. Okay, so that's just gonna be held off until the next meeting. Okay, what? So,
Yeah, you do.
No, this is just on for discussion.
No, there's a resolution.
There's a resolution.
so
So can't, you
Move
can't
to,
take
move
this
to table
public?
19-145.
I second that. Roll call. Motion to table. We're,
Ms. Burstein?
Yes.
Mr. Levy? Thanks.
Yes, I thought you were looking.
No, I just like that. Ms. Lieberman?
You're the only.
I'm not sure what we're voting
We're
on.
Tabling it.
Tabling the rest of
the next meeting to the 18th.
Yes.
Ms. Prupus? Tabling, yes. Marathon Eglos?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I would like to say one thing, there's not many people left, but there was another really fun thing that happened in town. The 4th grade boys lacrosse team had a 44-0 undefeated season. And that's pretty amazing, no matter how old you are or what sport you're playing.
2 seasons.
No, was it
2 seasons.
1 season, 2 seasons?
2 seasons.
28
44
boys, incredible team, and they had great coaching, so we're proud of them. Right? They're not here tonight, but we're proud of them. Sam, would you like to have the honors?
No.
Okay.
Second.
Sorry. Everyone wants to go home, so, okay, we're gonna go find out the results from the primary, and thank you all for coming. Good night.